Hey gang, we are in Fort Worth, Texas right now, and we're just coming up to Mount Olivet Cemetery. This is another case of our dysfunctional judicial system. Crazy story, you won't believe it. And we are here, beautiful day, about 60 degrees. We're in. It was 1981 here in Texas, in a small town of River Oaks. Her name, Retha Stratton, young woman, high school, and a terrible crime would happen. In fact, the whole community at the time was in fear because there were sexual assaults happening all over the place, and it was just there. There was like a serial attacker that was running loose, and sadly one of those assaults would turn into murder. She was 18 years old, Retha, cheerleader. She was described as a very friendly person who did well at school. She's very talented, but she was very, very confident also. And I mean strong-willed. And that would really come into play, as you will hear. She had recently moved from the family home into a house with her close friend, whose name was Amy Moody. Now, her father had warned her, said, be really careful, you girls are going to be alone. You know about these assaults that are all going on. You've got to really think before you go out at night or anywhere alone. But she said, boy, if that guy tries to get to me, I would die fighting before that lowlife, a guy like that, would have his way with me. I wouldn't. It's just not going to happen. Well, those words would be prophetic, because on January 21st, 1982, her housemate Amy came home, and she walked in the bedroom, and there was Retha dead, a bloody mess. She was actually found in the closet with her panties in her mouth. She had been viciously stabbed 38 times with the kitchen knife, and it was still embedded in her chest. Well, of course, Amy called the police, and the detectives came over, and they started to isolate the crime scene, collect evidence as they do. And they determined, the first thing they determined, there was no signs of forced entry, so it had to be somebody that she knew. Now, going back in January of 1981, there was a 16-year-old, Susan Davis, was attacked at her home there. This spree started. And in December of 1981, there were two assaults that happened in houses right across from each other there. And then Lisa, a girl named Lisa Gabbert, who was actually a friend of Retha's, was assaulted in her home over and over. And a day later, a girl who lived across the street was assaulted. It was crazy. Over and over and over. And in all of these cases, the survivors described that their attacker covered his face with a mask, and he had an athletic build. Now, The guy was so brazen that in one of the homes, and you knew he knew the girls, because in one of the homes, the mom was completely she had disabilities. I don't even know if she could hardly talk, but she was confined to a chair on drugs. And he literally, after the assault happened, she kind of followed him out of the bedroom, and she watched him take his mask off, and he walked right by her, and that's where she saw his dark hair and didn't see his face. But he had to have known that the mother was disabled and completely, there's no way she could report him. He felt pretty comfortable. Early in November 1981, there was another assault that took place in the town of Saginaw, which was nearby. Similar circumstances. They weren't really putting the pieces together, but there was a fingerprint found there. But that would come into play later. Now, after Aretha's murder, a neighbor told police about seeing a pickup truck in the area. Big lead. And it was right at the time of when the killing happened. And everyone immediately, interestingly, hey, one of our friends, Wesley, what about Wesley? 19-year-old Wesley Wayne Miller's name was brought up, and he was known to drive a vehicle just like that. Exactly. Well, Wesley was a high school football star, and oh my gosh, it couldn't be him. And he was dating one of our friends, Roxy McDonald, at the time, who was one of the cheerleaders, just like Susan and Lisa. There's no way. Well, they put a timeline together, and they figured that Aretha was killed around 5:30 p.m. Well, now, very interesting. Wesley was at his girlfriend's house. Her name was Roxy. And not too long after that, Wesley comes, he disappeared for a while, and then he comes back. And of course, Roxy's living with her parents. She's not, these are like 18, 19 years old. Parents are there. He comes walking in, and he's like, they're like, your jeans are off. What happened to you? His jeans are covered in blood. And he's like, oh, we got to wash the jeans. Well, what happened? Wash the jeans. Well, no, I was at football, and one of the guys got a bloody nose. So that's why my pants have blood from the belt all the way down to the floor. Well, the parents, they're not stupid. Once he bugged out of there, they immediately called the police, and thank God they did. Thank God they did. And the police came over to interview him and got him down to the station, and they didn't fool around. They arrested him. And all the evidence started lining up. And he was, of course, charged with Aretha's murder. And the jury found him guilty. It went through the whole trial. And they only were out an hour. And they found him guilty. However, it was decided that they would not hear about all the other sexual assaults that he surely did. And this is where things really start to break down. And I get so mad at our judicial system, between the judges and the juries. And, you know, there's lots of people at fault. But I go back to the judges. The judge would not allow the jury to hear as evidence in the trial all the sexual assaults. This guy was like, you know, he's sitting there on the stand like a puppy dog, a 15-year-old puppy dog. Oh, and they're like buying into it. Gullible. As my grandfather used to say, gullible gussies. They were gullible Gussies. So what do? They give them 25 years. Big deal. 25 years. And then they did hit him up with a concurrent 20-year sentence, for the Saginaw case, but it's your typical plea bargain ridiculous. And get this, less than 10 years later, he's out. The man who assaulted many and murdered one in the year 1991, everyone's high school friend, Wesley Wayne Miller, is released for good behavior. And what happens next? Just like the David Stuckel, these guys, they get out of prison and then they get in trouble again, and they just get the rehabilitation factor, right? That's all for gullible Gussies. And by the way, we're talking about that kind of stuff. The actress in Hollywood, I forget her name, a decade ago, 5 years ago, the guy came to her front door, the fan, shot her in the chest, I call him Monkey Face. He looks like a monkey. And he's in prison, and I looked up his website. Maybe we'll go to her grave someday. And they have victory gardens, and they do crochet. I mean, it's ridiculous. The whole system is so screwed up. And the Manson guy that killed that kid, that one I did in Colorado, and there's so many. They get married, they get college educations, they get to play with toys and electronics. Anyway, enough said. That's my rant. So we're at the grave here of the Stratton family. Mom, Dad, Aunt Aretha is here. These two stones right here. If you're coming, all you need to do is the Garden of the Last Supper, that monument that you just saw, and they're right next to the Taylors here. Very easy to find. So I just say here, miscarriage of justice. The guy's still floating around. Who knows if he's in prison or where he's at, but shame on the judge for not allowing, I'm not going to say the judge's name, but for not allowing the full composite of this man to be allowed in court. And also shame on the jury. Come on, folks, don't be so naive. But it's really sad. I wanted to come out and pay my respects. Here is Aretha Stone. So she was born May 27th, 1963, passed January 21st, 1982. Her father, who warned her, imagine the grief. A.J. Skinny, 1909 and 1992. He did not quite make it to that birthday. And Mom is here. A. Doris, December 19th, 1916, November 5th, 1999. Oh, very sad story. Brought a flower for Aretha, as I try to normally do. Well, Aretha D. Stratton, rest in peace.